Chapter 21 Holy Spirit Flame. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The important thing is not to accept bets that will definitely hurt you. Mu Yueli replied. I see. Isla silently nodded. After that, she said to Seal again, I won't accept bets of dirty things, say other things, treasure, or whatever. Unfortunately, Seal responded by shaking his head. I only see your beauty as an attractive thing. However, actually this bet is also pointless, since I can do anything to you in the first place. Bullshit. Isla's face turned red at Seal's words. I'm serious, you will be considered a rebel if you refuse my wishes. Seal replied. At this point, Isla had no other choice but to grind her teeth. At the same time, Seal continued, of course, to be fair, I want to get it the fair way, which is through this bet, so would you still refuse if all I wanted from you was those things, the right to feel your body? Isla. Forget it. Mu Yueli finally spoke before Isla spoke again. She was worried that the woman would be completely unable to control herself. After that, she said, now, can you explain the truth of the frozen heart that you said? Seal was a little disappointed that Isla did not lose control. However, he had wanted to tell the people of the Ice Palace about this from the beginning. Whether it was a good or bad thing didn't matter, the important thing was that they knew so that they could live with more choices. Perhaps at that time, if he had also teased Mu Yueli and Isla, the two might have been more open. The truth is, the highest peak of a frozen heart is to love someone until the heart freezes. He said. As he expected, all the women's faces froze after they heard his words. Isla was no exception, which meant she was also hearing it for the first time. After calming down, Isla said, where did you learn that nonsense? I'm sure you won't doubt the source, Seal replied, taking out one of his mirror jade and letting the ice goddess voice echo. Others don't know that the highest peak of the frozen heart is to love someone until one's own heart freezes. How is that possible? One by one, the Ice Palace disciples said the same thing. Isla and Mu Yueli even staggered, almost falling down. They touched their ears, checking if anything was wrong only to find nothing. It was truly the voice of the ice goddess. They had no doubts because they were very familiar with her. There is such a thing. Mei Mei, who was behind Seal, said. When Seal glanced at her, he found the girl's round face to be very red, and she looked at him shyly. One didn't need to think to know that her heart had been shaken, the determination she had originally built up had been shattered, replaced by something new, something she was much more comfortable with. And only she herself knew how fast her heart was beating. When Seal was just an ordinary cultivator with no background, she was already mesmerized by him. In the second encounter, she was able to restrain herself, but this she was more than just mesmerized. How could she not? The current Seal was no longer an ordinary cultivator. Although his cultivation was still mediocre, but his status was different, he had the same authority as the ice goddess in the Ice Palace. Seal didn't say anything to her. His eyes returned to looking at Mu Ishue, who was sighing when she saw the reaction of the others. Miss, can you get those snacks for me? Asked Seal, glancing at the plate of fries. His hand actually didn't reach it because it was quite far for him, who was in a leaning position on the throne. Mu Ishue glanced at his eyes. This time she showed no complaints, calmly picking up a fork, stabbing some of the fries. The moment she withdrew her hand, Seal had already opened his mouth first. Seeing that, Mu Ishue had no other choice but to continue pointing the fork all the way to his mouth. With his teeth, Seal picked up one piece of first and chewed it. It was very tender with a slight salty flavor, perfectly fitting his taste. Mu Ishue's actions left the others with no choice but to stare at the throne where she and Seal sat. Mu Yueli furrowed her brows, but there was a difference in her reaction, as if she tolerated it. The journey became very quiet as everyone on the boat continued to think about the new information. Seal, on the other hand, continued to enjoy the snacks Mu Ishue had given him, occasionally drinking the wine. He also kept looking at the scenery below. The ark's speed made it easily pass one continent after another. It was also so high that most people below were unaware that it was passing by. After passing through more than about 30 continents, the ark finally arrived at its destination, the Fire Mountain continent. Compared to the ice continent, this continent was really very small, but Seal who lived on this continent for a long time knew that it was even larger than the Earth. It was rather round in shape, and had a rather hot climate, more similar to the tropics. There wasn't much of anything special on this continent. The only thing considered remarkable is the volcano in the center of the continent. It has a huge crater in the center, filled with lava that looks like it could gush out at any moment. That's the reason why the continent is called the continent of volcanoes. Deep beneath the mountain, there was even the Holy Spirit flame. That was certainly something extraordinary, ranking 24th among the 30 holy flames. Any fire power user would definitely be interested in it, especially since it wasn't easy to find one even in the entire 7 realms. However, possessing it means possessing incredible fire power accompanied by awe-inspiring talent. Unfortunately, merging with a holy flame, even a low-ranked one, was not easy at all. You need talent, determination, strength, and most importantly various external help. Plus, even though the holy flame is in front of you, obtaining it isn't exactly easy. You still have to find its core, which is always very hidden, and without finding it it's impossible for you to fuse or try to move it. When Seal thought about that core, he couldn't help but think, it shouldn't be hard to find it with my eyes now. I just need to enter into that volcano. Entering that volcano would not be easy, even the hegemon would probably be reduced to ashes, a minimum of a 3rd stage hegemon to survive. And in fact, even they could not leave without untold wounds. Actually, it is only when one still has spiritual energy to protect the body. Otherwise, even demigods could get fatal wounds even within the Holy Spirit flame, which was quite low-ranked. It is precisely because of this that the Holy Spirit flame can stay there for a long time. To obtain it is not easy. However, Seal was not worried about that. Just a few moments inside the flame would not affect Isla and Muyueli at all. With their help, moving the core of the Holy Spirit flame would not be so difficult. Perhaps he could merge with the flame with the help of the Ice Goddess and the Elf Queen. Chapter 22 Snowfall. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Seal finally stood up from the throne so that Mu-Ishue could get off his thigh. She felt a certain satisfaction after sitting there, as if she and Seal were queen and king in front of their people. Even so, she was somewhat uncomfortable as she felt the gazes of her companions, especially those who were beating Seal on her orders. They suddenly felt wronged because before they could be said to have a crush on Seal. "Where are we going now?" asked Mu-Ishue. She was staring at the continent below through the side of the ark, something that made her expression strange. Her gaze could basically see the entire continent from up there, she could even feel the powerful auras on the continent. However, among them, the strongest people she found were only at the 4th hegemon stage. They were practically like juniors to her. With the difference in combat power, even the younger Mei Mei could probably easily defeat them. Seal didn't answer Mu-Ishue's question right away. He walked to the side of the ark. His eyes then gazed at the eastern region of the continent. There was a huge, ancient city nestled among the mountains. It was filled with humans, either mortals or cultivators. Every now and then, there was a group of young village men who entered the city excitedly, talking about the Fire King Academy. In the center of the town, there was indeed a separate special area full of academy buildings. A mighty aura always emanated from there, showing to passers-by that it was the lair of the hegemons. Young spiritual masters were not considered so impressive, only those who reached the spiritual king realm were considered geniuses. If Seal's entire life was spent on the Fire Mountain continent, then half of it was in that city and academy, which was also the place where he made many enemies. When you became the enemy of a group of elites in the academy, you would practically become the enemy of the entire continent, since the average young master of a noble clan in the continent attended the academy. Seal was unfortunately among such people. This did not mean he was the type to provoke people. Indeed, now he was quite unrestrained, but that was only because he had something to rely on. Before, he was still quite cautious. However, trouble doesn't come just because you like to make trouble, sometimes trouble comes because you're the type who easily makes people jealous. Seal is undoubtedly that type because of his good looks. His eyes then gazed at a small hill in the academy's backyard. There was a lake there where several young men were sitting beside it, meditating. The most conspicuous was the young man in the center. He had long brown hair, a tall and large body, and quite a handsome face. Occasionally, flames emanated from him, making smoke appear in the air. Third stage spiritual king, Alex, you always claim to be a peerless genius, but today I'm going to make you feel like trash, Seal said to himself. Alex was the best young genius on the Fire Mountain continent, considered the best even in the last 1,000 years. He also has an extraordinary status, Prince of the Fire River Kingdom. It was the largest kingdom on the continent. Just moments after Seal had observed them, Alex suddenly opened his eyes, exhaling a breath that seemed as if it could burn the air. The others opened their eyes as well because of his movement. Prince Alex, your talent is indeed amazing, I admit to being far inferior to you, said the young man with long black hair who looked like a scholar. The fat youth beside him then added, worthy of the best talent in 1,000 years. I'm afraid you still have trouble finding opponents on other continents. Alex smiled slightly at their words, as if he agreed with what they said. I will become hegemon in 2 months at the latest. After that, I will start traveling across the realm of life. If there are geniuses better than me, I will challenge them until they kneel at my feet. He was full of confidence as he said that. This didn't mean he had never heard things about other continents, but he had only heard them from people who just always wanted to cheer him up. Of course, in his mind, he thought he was great even looking into the entire realm of life. Seal showed a dismissive expression after he heard the man's words. He did not like hearing a group of people who overestimated themselves. Hence, his gaze moved to the academy's other students. Surprisingly enough, they were all talking about the Ice Palace recently having a prince. They were interested because the prince's name was Seal. You know, Seal has gone to the ice continent, is there any chance he's that prince? A thin and bald young man wondered while glancing left and right. His friends laughed at him after hearing his words. Don't say nonsense. What's so special about Seal, not to mention the prince of the Ice Palace, even being a village leader would be difficult for him. That prince, on the other hand, must have many extraordinary things. I heard that even the ice goddess disciple is in love with him. One of them replied. However, the bald youth still maintained his opinion. Isn't Seal indeed the type that many women fall in love with? And also, it's been confirmed that the prince has a low cultivation. Who knows, he might be the lost son of the ice goddess and now they meet again, so the goddess gave him an extraordinary status. Your words make sense. Some finally slightly agreed with the bald youth's words. However, if he really is the Seal we know, he would have come straight here for revenge. But where is he? We can see that Alex and the others don't care about the news. Maybe he's on his way here, the bald youth replied. And right after he said that, the air suddenly became very cold, enough to make the rivers freeze. Before he could even react, snow was suddenly falling. What happened? People were dumbfounded by the sight because there should be no snow on this continent. Chapter 23 Descent. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. It is customary for everyone to look up when snow falls. Simultaneously, everyone in the city and the academy looked up at the sky, and what they found left their mouths and eyes wide open. An icy arc descended amongst the snow, emitting a boundless cold aura, making all the trees instantly wither. As the arc descended further and further, the city began to tremble uncontrollably, as if it was unable to withstand the arc's majesty. It's really coming, said the bald youth and his companions. They had indeed never seen people from the Ice Palace, but there was no doubt that only they possessed such majesty. Although the bald youth kept saying that the seal who became the Ice Prince was the seal they knew, that didn't mean he was 100% convinced. But now there could no longer be any doubts because it was also impossible for the Ice Palace people to come to a place like this unless there was a clear reason. The only reason was obviously just Seal bringing them here. Fortunately, the ark stopped when it arrived about 1 kilometer above the city. It stopped emitting the aura so the city could calm down again. However, the situation only made people more tense. Even the great teachers at the academy couldn't calm down. Because they were stronger, so they could feel how strong the aura above the ark was. The number of cultivators stronger than them was truly countless. Of course, they couldn't sense the existence of Isla and Muyueli or else they would be really afraid to come out. Even Muishue's aura wasn't something they could sense. Only moments later, figure after figure stepped down from the ark, led by a young man and followed by young ladies, each of whom could claim to be the supreme beauty of this continent. My God, is this the so-called goddesses descending to the mortal world? People were shocked and couldn't believe what they were seeing. A sight like this can practically be told for generations to come, even becoming a source of pride for those who saw it. Of course, since Seal was quite famous in this city, they quickly gazed towards him. He was different even though his cultivation was still exactly the same. The clothes he wore were products that could not be found on this continent, and even if there were, only a few people could afford them. In Seal's time in this city, his clothes were always bad and that was enough for him to be the handsomest. Today with new clothes and followed by a group of beautiful women, even with his weak cultivation, he still gave the impression of a son of heaven leading the goddesses. Beside the lake, Alex and his friends turned deathly pale, some even trembled in fear. Whoosh! 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 The great teachers consisting of 6 people exited the academy, then stopped in front of the gate as Seal and the others landed there. They consisted of 2 old men, a middle-aged man and woman, and 2 young-looking men. The 2 old men were in the hegemon 3rd stage, the 2 middle-aged people were in the 2nd stage, and the last 2 men were in the 1st stage. To the people in the city, they were unreachable majestic beings. Little did they know that now they felt as if they were losing their majesty. Those women had cultivations equal to them, some even stronger, at the 4th and 5th stages. The last woman, who was currently standing beside Seal, was even stronger in addition to being much more beautiful. Looking at Seal, they weren't sure how to talk to him. Of course, the cold gaze of the woman beside Seal made them salute immediately. Greetings Ice Prince, they said simultaneously. Seal looked at them one by one, unsure whether to laugh or cry. They were not really his enemies as they mostly acted neutrally as the managers of this academy. His enemies were only the academy students who later used their backgrounds to oppress him. Since there was no enmity, he did not hold a grudge either. While looking at the eldest of the 2 old men, he said, Dean, I don't want to create a mess here, I just hope you bring Alex and his gang here. The Dean seemed to still have some sanity, knowing that he had to be on Seal's side because there was no way the noble clans on this continent could stand against the Ice Palace. The truth was that no one was strong enough to subdue the Ice Palace in the entire realm of life. After Seal spoke, the Dean immediately extended his hand into the academy. Rumble. In an instant, his hand enlarged, arriving at the hill behind the academy. He grabbed the youths there and led them to the gate. Although they were a group of geniuses, they could do nothing in front of Dean, whose strength was incomparable. Bang! 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 One by one, their bodies were dropped in front of Seal. Of course, they already knew what was happening because they also saw how Seal got off the ark. Their expressions became erratic as they looked at the current Seal, even Alex wasn't sure what to do. He was actually very surprised to see so many people with the hegemon aura in front of him. The problem was that they were really young, some younger than him. This was something that exceeded his imagination, as he had once thought that he actually had the qualifications to enter the Ice Palace had he been a woman and possessed the power of ice. Just now he was talking about exploring the realm of life, making every genius he met kneel to him. While saying that he was filled with confidence, but just seeing one of the Ice Palace disciples instantly shattered his confidence. "Prince, do you want me to kill them?" Dean suddenly asked, a question that made everyone take a deep breath. It was practically a statement that he didn't mind making enemies with the clan behind those young men. Seal responded to Dean's question with a shake of his head. "No need, just break their legs and arms," he replied. Chapter 24 Another guest. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Seal had no interest in seeing their deaths because it would be too easy, it was better if they suffered. His answer was quite unexpected for people because they originally thought he would refuse Dean's help and do everything himself. That's how great people usually do things. But it was unexpected that he accepted it, and it even seemed like he ordered Dean to do so. Alex was naturally angry and couldn't accept it. With a gloomy face, he stood up and pointed his hand at Seal. "If you dare, fight 1.1 with me," he said while releasing his aura, which instantly turned into flames. The flames then formed a red dragon that reached 30 meters tall, looking majestic and ferocious. People in the city were amazed by the sight, thinking that Alex was truly someone with abilities. "He should be stronger than most Ice Palace disciples, right?" said an innocent youth who didn't have enough strength to distinguish the difference in their powers. "Fool!" His words made his senior hit his head. At the same time, the Ice Palace disciples looked at Alex with strange expressions, as if he was a monkey performing a show in front of them. Suddenly, Mei, who was standing slightly behind Seal, pointed her hand at the man. "Your fire is too disgusting," she said. Whoosh! A drop of energy shot out from her fingertips, flying towards the dragon-shaped flames. At first glance, it was like throwing sand into the ocean, but when the energy entered the flames, Alex was instantly dumbfounded. He hurriedly looked back only to find the flames turned into a pile of snow. This. The Academy great teachers looked at each other in surprise. Indeed, they could defeat Alex, but it was impossible to suppress his power with just a drop of energy. On the other hand, after releasing the attack, Mei shyly glanced at Seal. She was surprised that she acted, and then she realized that she actually wanted Seal's attention. "Alex, how dare you challenge the Ice Prince? You deserve to be punished," Dean suddenly shouted. His palm enlarged, releasing an incomparable aura as it fell on Alex and his friends. They were instantly rendered helpless, unable to even speak. "Old man, touch my son and I will destroy your academy." Suddenly, a loud shout echoed from afar, startling the people. Bang! Flames soared into the sky, creating boundless black smoke. Just like Alex's fire, it also turned into a dragon, but this one was truly huge, over 2 kilometers tall, and could even roar. People trembled when they felt that power because they knew that it came from the strongest figure on this continent. "The Fire River King," they said. "He's not alone," another added. Sure enough, from each side of him, an elephant and a fire crocodile appeared. Both made loud noises to the sky, as if declaring for war. "They're both royal elders, their cultivation is also at the 4th stage hegemon," said an old man. To him, they were the biggest giants on this continent. Seeing one was already amazing, but now 3 had appeared. Of course, after them more would appear, the hegemons as well. They shouted and threatened Dean to let go of their son. Even for Seal, their power was an exciting show, like the greatest natural disaster in the imagination of the Earth people. The mountains exploded while the oceans burned dry. The land continued to tremble, tearing down vast forests. Compared to their power, the current Seal was as small as an ant, completely helpless. Fortunately, he had a group of hegemons by his side. His eyes looked at Mu Ishue, who was just watching the arrival of those people calmly. Dear Ishue, show them the power of an ice goddess disciple, he told her. The word he used to call her made her blush. She looked at him somewhat embarrassed before nodding. After that, she pointed her hand towards the sky. Storm, punish them, she said in a low voice. All the experts actually kept their eyes on her because they knew that she was the strongest. Hearing her status, they could not help but draw in a cold breath. And it didn't take long before they trembled as her aura finally escaped from her body. Whoosh! A huge ice storm suddenly appeared, reaching the northern and southern ends, even turning the entire area white with snow. It caused cold winds to appear everywhere, and they instantly made those flames small. What? The same word appeared everywhere. Obviously the so-called king and those nobles were stunned by the power that suddenly appeared. It gave the impression that they were just juniors who had just learned to walk. Actually, with their combat power, even if they were at the Hegemon 7th stage, they might still not be Mu Ishue's opponent, not to mention with their cultivation now. Rumble. Suddenly in the sky appeared various objects made of ice, from spears that were more than a kilometer long, to giant pillars, to ice mountains. They were countless, completely filling the entire sky. After that, they fell into the areas where the people were. Bang! 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 Ah, no! Help, help, save me! Loud shocks resounded accompanied by desperate screams, as if they were on their way to death. Unfortunately, how could anyone save them when they were already the strongest on this continent? Calmness came not long after as the auras of those people had already completely disappeared. There was no need to confirm that they were dead. At this point, even Alex couldn't help but shake with cold sweat. Of course, he was more talented than his father, but he never dared to underestimate the latter. In his opinion, his father belonged to the mighty figures because he could be the strongest on this continent. Only today did he know that even his father was not significant at all. At the same time, Dean, who had originally stopped his movement, resumed it. Bang! Alex and the others were hit by his huge palm, instantly losing their legs and arms. Their auras became extremely weak, as if they could die at any moment. Seal had often wondered how long it would be before being able to take revenge, but it was unexpected that it was so quick and simple. He didn't need to do anything, just needed to command others. This made him somewhat bored. In the end, he waved his hand while saying, "Kick them, I don't want to see them anymore." The Dean immediately carried out his order. He kicked them until they were thrown far away, falling in the vast forest. Maybe they could still live, but it was impossible to live without suffering. Plus, the people who also held grudges against them would definitely continue to pursue them. Just right after that, a charming yet cold soft voice suddenly echoed from a rooftop. "Heh, so this is how the people of the Ice Palace oppress the weak," said the voice that was clearly that of a woman. It shocked the people as they never thought anyone would dare to speak presumptuously to the Ice Palace disciples. Chapter 25 Jian Wuxin. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. All the Ice Palace disciples spontaneously stared in the direction where the voice came from with cold eyes. They might have different opinions on this matter, but they were also the type that disliked criticism from outsiders. And when finally seeing the person who spoke, they couldn't help but squint. Seal, on the other hand, showed an interested expression. "Who are you, miss?" he asked, staring at the figure on the roof of the building. This one was a beautiful figure that was not inferior at all to Mu Ishue. She was young, had pure white skin, a slim body, and gray hair that was neatly put up in a bun. Her face was so beautiful with a perfect pointed nose, a pair of sharp red lips, cheeks that had dimples, and gray eyes that seemed to hide another world. She was actually wearing a black Japanese kimono dress which made her look very elegant, but also gave the impression that she was a warrior as she was carrying a long sword. Despite all that, what was most striking about her was still her aura, a sword aura that looked like it could cut off the heads of everyone on this continent simultaneously. No one doubted that she was also extremely strong, no less than Mu Ishue. The woman hadn't answered Seal's question yet, but Mu Yixue said it first. Prince, she's the daughter of the sword god, Jian Wuxin. Sword god. The title thrilled Seal because he was one of the 3 people who could compete with the ice goddess and the elf queen in this realm of life. The fact that this woman was his daughter was truly shocking. After all, the status of daughter was different from that of disciple. The former had a blood relationship while the latter was just another person recruited to be taught cultivation. Of course, what puzzled Seal was why that woman was on this small continent. Did she just happen to pass by and stop by after hearing the commotion? No one could hear Mu Yixue's words except Jian Wuxin. The woman looked at Mu Yixue who was also looking at her. Then, she smiled coldly. I heard you're amazing, Mu Yixue, disciple of the ice goddess, but look at how you are now, you really look like a little concubine of a little man, she told her. Mu Yixue's face blushed for a moment at her words, but she couldn't help but be angry at being belittled. Firstly, her current situation was beyond her control. She was certain that Jian Wuxin was also no different if she was in the same situation as her. And secondly, although this was indeed a situation that was beyond her control, she couldn't deny that she rather enjoyed it because she always felt romantic whenever she interacted with Seal. That's none of your business, Mu Yixue replied in a cold tone. When she said that, her aura radiated clearly from her body, something that caused the ice storm to appear again. The air became so cold, people on this continent who were used to the heat and focused more on fire power began to tremble and feel uncomfortable. I hope your strength is enough to protect you from your words, she added. Mu Yixue did seem cute in front of Seal, but under normal circumstances, one could not think of leaving if one dared to insult her. Humph. Of course, Jian Wuxin was the same type as her. She responded by pointing her sword at Mu Yixue. You people of the Ice Palace are quite secretive, since you are the strongest among the younger generation there, you must often think that you are amazing, now I will make you realize that you are not that significant. She said. Her aura radiated from her body. And although it didn't cause an effect like Mu Yixue's aura, but the pressure was not different at all, making the air drastically reduced so that breathing became something difficult. The stronger people looked at each other with worry. If these two fought, they would practically cause a disaster to this continent. The worst thing was that this continent would sink into the sea. Before they made a move, Seal cleared his throat and grabbed Mu Yixue's hand so that the woman drew her aura. What's the point of fighting, it's just ruining this nice atmosphere. Miss Jian, how about we have some tea and chat, I know a good restaurant in this city, he said, trying to be friendly. Unfortunately, the response from Jian Wuxin was not friendly at all. And who gave you the right to speak to me? She said coldly. Don't boast of your status, I only look to strength, she added. Seal had expected her to say that. In response he sighed and shook his head. Would you believe me if I said that I could make you chase me even to the deepest hell, he asked, something which made Mu Yixue smile wryly. However, she couldn't help but be curious as to whether or not Jian Wuxin had any embarrassing secrets. And she hoped her secret was more embarrassing than hers. Of course, Seal's words made Jian Wuxin put on a bad expression. And my sword can cut your soul right now, running becomes impossible, she said. You still have to pass me, Mu Yixue replied. Right after she said that, Jian Wuxin actually moved, lunging towards Mu Yixue. She was so fast that no one could see her except Mu Yixue and Seal. The latter was relying on the eyes of heaven. Since the woman was attacking, Mu Yixue had no other choice but to move. A silver spear with a cold aura appeared in her hand as she stepped forward. She then thrust it forward. Bang! It met with Jian Wuxin's sword, producing a bang sound so loud that the entire continent could hear it. The two women's bodies were shaken instantly, but what was even more shocking was that the buildings in the entire city instantly collapsed simultaneously. The academy was no exception despite the fact that many formations were protecting it. They were unfortunately unable to protect the academy from the effects of the two women's clash. Amazingly, it didn't throw people off their feet or cause them to lose their balance. It was just that it was indeed very strange to see such a large city suddenly become ruins. Chapter 26 Next destination. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. The Dean of the Fire King Academy sighed, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. He wondered who would stop them. Seal might be able to stop Mu Yixue, but he wouldn't be able to stop Jian Wuxin. Fortunately, right after the first clash, an old woman figure suddenly appeared behind Jian Wuxin. She was like a ghost because no one could sense her existence unless they saw her in person. "Miss, you must stop, it would be bad if this continent is destroyed," the old woman said. Hearing that, Jian Wuxin glanced back, then jumped into the area beside the old woman. "You're lucky," she said to Mu Yixue, clearly thinking of her as a lion who stopped bullying a cat. Mu Yixue wasn't happy to hear what she said. While snorting softly and pointing her spear at her, she said, "I don't mind a fight to the death whenever it is." Jian Wuxin was clearly not afraid. She was about to reply, but was interrupted by Seal, who suddenly said while patting Mu Yixue on the back, "Don't make such an agreement, this girl will be your sister in the future." Mu Yixue parted her lips at his words. On the other hand, Jian Wuxin froze with her mouth open. She understood Seal's words, and clearly the latter implied that she would become his subordinate as well, or rather his girl. "Boy, who taught you to speak so presumptuously?" The old woman became angry, staring at Seal with eyes that looked as if they were ready to spit fire. Unfortunately, it didn't affect Seal at all, so the old woman was confused. She glanced at the ark above, suspecting that one of the two people above was secretly shielding Seal from her gaze, but she really didn't feel any movement, as if they weren't doing anything. If she was weak, it was natural that she didn't feel it, but she wasn't an ordinary old woman. In terms of strength, she could compete with Isla. Unless Isla broke through to the god realm, her movements would definitely be discovered by her. Moreover, Isla was not a cultivator who was skilled in stealthy movements. She was the kind who fought in a conspicuous manner. "It seems that you have some abilities, little boy," the old woman said after thinking that Seal was protecting himself. Jian Wuxin hadn't expected that she would say that. It made her stare at Seal once more, wondering what abilities the old woman was referring to. And Seal thought that this old woman had a better brain than Isla and Mu Yue. Even though her previous words were quite harsh, at least she knew that he was extraordinary. When he answered, he gave her a compliment. "You really are open-minded, madam. I would prefer it if you were the elder in the Ice Palace." His words naturally made Isla and Mu Yue, who were watching from the top of the ark, knit their brows. They slightly felt that Seal was satirizing them. The old woman didn't respond to Seal's words. She looked at Jian Wuxin and said, "Miss, it's time for us to leave." Jian Wuxin nodded, then flew into the air with the old woman. She glanced at Seal before she increased her speed. Of course, Seal knew that this was not the time to keep an eye on Jian Wuxin. First, they had only met in a place, and she wasn't in her house. There was little chance of her doing anything strange. It was just that, he couldn't help but narrow his eyes as he looked at the woman's aim. She was clearly going to the center of the continent where the volcano was located. What is she looking for? She shouldn't be interested in the Holy Spirit flame, right? Seal thought. After that, he looked around with an expression like he did not know whether to laugh or cry. This city had completely collapsed. Even if it was rebuilt, the result would definitely be different. In other words, he couldn't remember anything here anymore. However, he didn't think much of it either. His life here was so bleak, having only enemies with no friends at all. The last thing he needed was to never have to come here again to find someone. "Let's go," he said to Mu Yixue and the others. He took a step back into the ark, stared at by everyone in awe. "At least one of my academy disciples made it big," said the dean. "In the future, people will know that he started his journey from this place." The other teachers looked at him strangely after hearing his words. Actually, even if Seal became very famous, no one would be impressed by him if he could not increase his personal power. Status could make people afraid, but only strength could make people admire. Seal quickly arrived on the ark. Isla and Muyueli were looking at him, as if waiting for what else he wanted. Go to the center of the continent, I want you two to help me retrieve the Holy Spirit flame, I'm sure you two can sense its existence, he said. When hearing that, the two middle-aged women knitted their brows. Do you know that it's not easy to find the core of the holy flame, even a low-level one like the Holy Spirit flame, Muyueli replied. 1 year or even 10 years might not be enough. Even if we can withstand the heat, it's only temporary, we'll still run out of spiritual energy if it's too long. And it could cause us injuries or worse than that if there's an accident. If you come along, you'll die under the condition. And why do you think that we need a long time? Seal answered with a question. What do you mean? This time it was Isla who asked. I know where the core of the flame, Seal replied. Are you serious? Isla and Muyueli spontaneously asked simultaneously, surprised by Seal's words. Even Mu-Ishue almost said the same thing, she only restrained herself as she realized it was inappropriate for her to speak like that to Seal. Chapter 27 Under the Volcano. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. When have I never been serious? I've always been serious, never said nonsense, Seal replied, which of course made Isla and Muyueli's lips twitch as they assumed he kept talking nonsense. Let's go, don't linger here, he added. Isla and Muyueli looked at each other again, the latter slightly nodding to the former, as if she was saying that just do what he wanted. After that, Isla began to steer the ark towards the center of the continent. Rumble. The movement of the ark shook space and land. However, people couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief as they watched them leave. Seeing the people from the Ice Palace was indeed an amazing experience, but it was also extremely nerve-wracking, as if the Grim Reaper was already beside them. To go to the center of the continent, the ark only took a few minutes. It easily passed through the huge forests surrounding the volcano. There, Jian Wuxin and the old woman Elder Meng were standing on the side of the volcano's crater, looking at the lava within. Seeing the arrival of the Ice Palace ark, they couldn't help but knit their brows. Why are they here? Jian Wuxin wondered. Although she wasn't afraid of them, she didn't want her business interrupted. Right after that, Elder Meng said, they are also moving. What she meant was obviously Isla and Muyueli. Sure enough, when Seal and the others descended from the ark, the two middle-aged women followed behind them. It didn't take them long to arrive beside the crater, more precisely beside Jian Wuxin and Elder Meng. The latter looked at Isla and asked, what do you want to do here, Isla? What about you, Elder Meng? Isla asked back. The two women squinted, as if they wanted to fight over a treasure. We're here for the Holy Spirit flame, I hope our goals aren't the same. Seal finally spoke. When she heard that, Jian Wuxin immediately replied, how are you going to get that flame? Her expression looked dubious when she said that. However, it also made Seal understand that their goals were not the same. That's not difficult for me, he replied with a confident smile. Since I've already said my goal, so can you say yours, Miss Jian? Seal continued with the question. Unfortunately, Jian Wuxin replied with a soft snort. None of your business, you mind your own business. OMG, you're too cold, miss. Seal wasn't angry, he just laughed after hearing her reply. Elder Ming observed Seal after she heard him say that it wasn't difficult for him. She wondered if that was true. After that, she glanced at Isla and Muyueli, who did indeed seem like they were following Seal's wishes. Then, she shook her head, throwing away her thoughts before saying to Jian Wuxin. Miss, let's go. Jian Wuxin nodded. Her aura radiated, coating her body from head to toe. Together with Elder Ming, she jumped into the crater and then dived into the lava lake within the crater. Their auras disappeared very quickly. Seal looked at Isla and Muyueli as he said, come on, but just us, the others wait here. Seal looked at Mu Yixue and the others after saying that. They nodded in response, as if there was an instinct to obey him. Right after that, Seal saw Isla point her finger at him. Ice energy flowed from there, enveloping his body, and it then turned into an ice armor. It was very light and did not make Seal feel cold, but at the same time, Seal felt a very safe sensation, as if he would be fine even if he went to hell. As he observed the ice armor with his eyes of heaven, he found that it was very structured. Isla obviously spent a lot of energy to make it, even though on the surface she did it casually. Perhaps she was also worried about something bad happening to him, so the ice goddess was angry. Seal smiled slightly before jumping into the crater. Whoosh! His speed also increased due to the presence of the ice armor. It didn't take him long to arrive right in front of the lava. There, he stopped briefly to make sure everything was safe. Only when he felt no heat at all did he dive into the lava. In front of him, everything was completely dark, like a night without light. However, as his eyes looked around, the scene quickly became very clear. Seal found many bones around him, from the bones of beasts to humans. Some still emitted an extraordinary aura, which meant the owner of those bones was quite a powerful expert. Whoosh! Isla suddenly sent an ice spear forward, splitting the lava to create a path. Far below, surprisingly enough, was a hidden crypt, seemingly vast and full of light. The curious Seal didn't use the power of his eyes further, he flew there instead. When he finally arrived there, his mouth opened slightly at the sight that shocked him. Below, he saw a boundless land mass, so vast, it was probably as wide as the continent above. And that land was filled with flames that were transparent in color. It was precisely because it was transparent that the land could be seen. Occasionally, there were explosions in those transparent flames, releasing shockwaves so powerful and hot that space seemed to be on fire. Looking at those flames without using the power of the eyes of heaven made Seal feel a stinging sensation in his eyes, so that even his tears dripped out. It's strange that the continent above isn't burning with the Holy Spirit flame below it, Mu Yue said suddenly. When she heard that, Isla narrowed her eyes, looked around, but failed to find anything. There must be something that protects the continent, or rather it makes the forces here not affect things outside so much, she said. Maybe they know that. She stared at the specific area within the flame where Jian Wuxin and Elder Meng stood. Seal did not care about them now, as he began to make observations with the power of his eyes. Since the flame was transparent in color, so the core was even more transparent that it was almost invisible. Plus, the core of the holy flame was always small, which was why it was so difficult to find it in such a vast place. However, the true ability of the eyes of heaven was to see everything, including hidden things. When he activated the power of the eyes further, various things that should have been invisible began to appear, such as various kinds of tiny fire insects. They were clearly visible to his eyes. And it didn't take him long to find something that stood out. It was like a diamond, just the size of a handheld. What was interesting about it was its aura of extreme heat, as if it was the source of all heat. Chapter 28 Arrival of a Demigod. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Let's go there, Seal said as he pointed in the direction where the core was. Isla and Mu Yue, who followed his gaze, found nothing. They were somewhat hesitant, but had no other choice but to follow him when he took a step. While going there, Seal began to watch Jian Wuxin and Elder Meng. He wanted to know what they were talking about. And it didn't take him long to arrive in front of that transparent flames. It was emitting an extremely strong scent of heat. If he wasn't protected by that ice armor, just breathing could definitely make him die. However, that ice armor allowed him to breathe comfortably. Even if he was mortal, he wouldn't be afraid of those flames. This time, he did not even stop flying, continuing to head towards the place where the core was. At this point, Elder Meng and Jian Wuxin couldn't help but observe them. The latter asked, if in case they take this flame, will it be alright? She didn't want to assume Seal actually had the ability, but that flying speed made her instincts think that Seal could actually find the core of the flame. When the Lord came to this place, this Holy Spirit flame was still just a small seed, and that was not the reason the Lord chose to come here. He left this flame here just so that there would be a natural barrier so that random people wouldn't come to this place. Elder Meng replied, implying that the Holy Spirit flame wasn't important to them. However, we can't let them see us. Those two women shouldn't dare to make trouble, right? Said Jian Wuxin. True, but I'm afraid that boy can't resist curiosity. He seems to be able to make Isla and Mu Yueli helpless. Elder Meng looked at Arthur again, knitting her brows and wondering what exactly the ability he had. If he dares, my sword will not remain silent, Jian Wuxin said in a cold tone. Little did she know that Seal could hear their conversation as he kept a close eye on them. After hearing all of their words, he instantly concluded that they weren't doing anything simple here. The Lord that old woman is referring to should be the sword god, Seal thought, because only he had the right to be called such by Elder Meng. And the fact that such a figure had ever come to this continent was truly amazing and unexpected. What is he preparing here? Seal knew that he had to keep a close eye on them because he might discover a good secret. Not long after, he finally arrived at the intended area. Even after arriving there, Isla and Mu Yueli still looked confused. They would practically not notice unless they touched the core directly. Over there. Seal pointed ahead. Isla and Mu Yueli glanced at it, the latter then pointed her hand forward. Ice energy flowed from her hand, surrounding the area pointed out by Seal and covering it. Rumble. There was a sudden tremor as the boundless flames separated with its core. Of course, the flames didn't disappear immediately, but they seemed to lose control, becoming extremely chaotic. They really found it. Jian Wuxin had no other choice but to be even more shocked when she saw the scene. Elder Meng, on the other hand, was silent, but seemed to be thinking. In the end, she grabbed Jian Wuxin's hand as she said, "Let's go." Right after she said that, a tunnel suddenly appeared under her feet and she directly entered it with Jian Wuxin. In some areas of the blaze, there were flames surging upwards, and coming out through the cracks of the land. This shocked the people above the land when they saw white flames everywhere. Noel and some knowledgeable ones immediately came to the conclusion of what was happening. They have obtained the core of the Holy Spirit flame, they said. It must be the people from the Ice Palace who did it, I hope no fools come to interfere. Unfortunately, the turmoil from the Holy Spirit flame was indeed so great, it could be felt by people from other continents. Some were continents so large that high-level hegemons could be found. When they felt the turmoil, their eyes were immediately drawn to the Fire Mountain continent. Near that continent, there was actually a truly extraordinary continent, the Ancient Ark continent. This was a continent with more experts and there was even a demigod among them, though only in the first stage. At this point, red light shot out from the center of the continent, illuminating each side of the continent with a boundless aura of heat. True Fire Lord. The people of the continent referred to his title with trembling because he was the strongest there. Incidentally, he also focused on the power of fire, so there was no way he wouldn't be interested in something like this. The light that enveloped his body dissipated, revealing the figure of an old man with red hair. He was already somewhat hunched over, but his legs seemed as if they could easily sink a mountain. His face was filled with joy as he looked at the Fire Mountain continent. Someone really found the core, who is it? He wondered. Of course, he didn't know that there were people from the Ice Palace there, or else he wouldn't even dare to jump out of his lair. I have to go no matter what. With my fire power, I have the advantage to fight there. His eyes emitted a greedy light. After saying that, he directly flew towards the Fire Mountain continent. He was so fast, splitting the clouds in his path and leaving a trail of flames behind him. When they saw him, the hegemons chose not to move. A demigod also came, they really had no chance at all to compete. When the true Fire Lord arrived at the Fire Mountain continent, he instantly released boundless flames. A sea of flames filled the continent's skies, making the entire continent a desert in just an instant due to overheating. People didn't even have time to react to the changes around them. When they realized, they could only curse. "Damn, this continent is almost destroyed now," some of them said. Of course, with the continent's natural climate, it would return to the way it was, but that would take time, not happen in a short period of time. Chapter 29 Islah's Moves. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 29 Islah's Moves. Seal could naturally sense the commotion above. He stared over there, his eyes piercing through the land. When he saw that boundless sea of flames, he couldn't help but be astonished. This was a power so great, beyond his imagination, that he thought a god had come. Indeed, he had seen two gods, even now standing with two demigods. However, he had never seen them unleash power. Perhaps from his point of view, their powers did not look different at all, as they both gave the impression of being limitless. Only they themselves knew the difference. Like even Muyueli and Isla, in front of the ice goddess, they were still just helpless little beings. Just a little fish. Isla suddenly spoke. An ice spear appeared in her hand, looking extremely solid, as if it was created from the vast ocean being condensed before being frozen. Casually, she threw the spear into the volcano's crater. Whoosh! It was so fast, extinguishing all the lava inside the volcanic crater as it passed by. Then, it flew high into the sky. The true Fire Lord had just stepped down from within his sea of flames only to find an ice spear hurtling towards him. He froze with his eyes wide open. Aside from the fact that it was too fast, the pressure also made it difficult for him to move. Damn it! He cursed as he realized that he had encountered too powerful an enemy. Knowing that he couldn't dodge, so he could only parry the ice spear. In front of him, an enormous pagoda appeared, covered in flames. It seemed to be an artifact that was forged continuously so that it had an extremely high density. Unfortunately, the moment the ice spear struck the pagoda, the flames enveloping it instantly froze and the pagoda was then knocked aside. Bang! It quickly fell, collapsing countless mountains. No. The true Fire Lord suddenly couldn't help but panic in this situation. He hadn't expected the difference in their strength to be so great. And he couldn't do anything else either, as the spearhead was already stuck in front of him and easily pierced his heart. It brought him into that sea of flames that instantly became an enormous block of ice. Oh my God! People were mesmerized by the sight, having nothing but admiration. However, that awe was short-lived. The block of ice suddenly began to fall. Damn! The block of ice was bigger than the continent, so if it fell, the continent would practically sink into the sea. Of course, Isla was not the type who would destroy a non-originating party in a normal situation like this. She snapped her fingers and the block of ice instantly turned into snow, slowly falling onto the continent. People could finally heave a sigh of relief, but looking at the amount of snow, they estimated that the continent would continue to be snowed in for several years. The desert instantly disappeared, the continent becoming an ice continent instantly. Bang! In the midst of that snow, a spear-pierced ice sculpture fell, a sight that shocked people. When they saw whose statue it was, they took a deep breath, looking at each other with fear. Seal looked at Isla after that, thinking that this woman looked even more beautiful. Perhaps it was because she had already shown her great strength. What? Isla was uncomfortable with Seal's gaze that seemed to want to eat her. Seal smiled in response and said, "Well, help me get that core now." Isla didn't want to continue interacting with him for fear of some other nonsense coming out of his mouth. She looked at Muyueli and nodded to her. After that, she stepped towards the core of the flame while Muyueli opened a path from the ice barrier she created. The core of the flame was still barely visible, but its existence felt very clear. Arriving in front of the core, Isla took out a yellow piece of paper filled with runes and in the center was the word Seal. It was a formation that had a function similar to a storage ring. However, it was of course quite different, as the storage ring probably couldn't withstand something as powerful as the Holy Spirit flame. Hence, something was specially created to deal with it. Isla then placed the seal under the core. "Open it," she said in a low voice. Immediately afterward a vortex-like hole appeared under the core. It was trying to absorb the core, but obviously the process would not be easy. At the same time, it began to absorb the flame first. That flame flowed in from the new holes created by Mu Yueli on her ice barrier. This kind of thing was necessary so that there would be no chaos. Of course, the time required would not be short either. Seal turned his attention to Jian Wuxin and Elder Meng, who entered the tunnel under the flame. The tunnel was extremely long. Surprisingly enough, there were swords stuck everywhere. Those swords weren't actually real swords, Seal could see the truth. They were something created from spiritual energy that leaked out and then turned into swords because the spiritual energy itself was full of the laws of the sword. This was indeed something very miraculous, but Seal couldn't help but wonder how a god experienced such leaking energy. It was actually impossible unless the god did it on purpose or was injured too badly. There, Jian Wuxin and Elder Meng walked with slow steps. There were several protective formations, but they were able to pass easily as if they knew the secrets of all those formations. Moments later, they arrived at another crypt where there was a large gate locked with a great sword. It did not emit an aura, but it seemed that it could not be opened by anyone except those with permission. Jian Wuxin narrowed her eyes as she looked at the gate, looking nervous. "Miss, only your blood can open this gate," Elder Meng told her. Jian Wuxin nodded, her nail digging into her finger until a drop of blood fell out. She didn't let the blood fall to the ground, she picked it up and walked toward the gate. Arriving in front of it, she placed her hand on the gate so that the blood would also stick to the gate. Rumble. It suddenly rumbled, and finally emitted an extremely powerful aura. An aura that could definitely make many continents tremble. However, fortunately the formations in the tunnel prevented the aura from leaking out. Bang! The great sword fell and the gate began to open slowly. Chapter 30 Secret. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Behind the gate, there was a spacious and magnificent hall, not much different from the Ice Goddess Palace Hall in terms of splendor. However, there was nothing there but a sword stuck in the center of the hall. The sword was golden in color, quite long, and had two blades that looked like they could each cut through the sky. Vaguely, there was a sharp light emanating from the sword. The light seemed to be able to tear apart whoever it enveloped because when you looked closely, you would find countless sword slashes within the light. Elder Meng took a deep breath when she saw the sword. She looked at Jian Wuxin, nodding lightly to her. The latter then took a step into the hall, toward the sword. Her steps were slow, but every time the soles of her feet stepped on the floor of the hall, the sound of footsteps echoed loudly. Jian Wuxin quickly arrived in front of the sword. She sighed softly, then took out something from her storage ring. It was an aluminum bottle, having a seal on it. Jian Wuxin had to use her blood to break the seal. Only after the seal disappeared could the bottle be opened. Seal peered into the bottle and found golden blood filled with power. Even just looking at that blood made the blood in his body tremble uncontrollably, as if he was looking at supreme blood. Wait, that's not blood essence, right? How can there be so much blood essence? Seal was confused. Every cultivator practically had blood essence that if used could increase strength, but afterwards could cause the strength to weaken drastically unless the blood essence was replenished. That was not easy, of course, because replenishing blood essence required a large amount of resources. Of course, the blood essence that each cultivator possessed was also not as much as in that bottle. The owner should have collected it little by little. As Seal was still wondering, Jian Wuxin placed the bottle in front of the sword as she said, "Father, please get up." Her words sounded like thunder in Seal's ears. He opened his mouth as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. What does that mean? He wondered again. Swish. Suddenly the blood essence came out of the bottle and enveloped the sword. The sword then shook violently, emitting more light. After that, the sword began to absorb that blood essence so that it dried up very quickly. Wuxin, so it's you, it's a good thing you came here or I would have really died. Suddenly a man's voice that sounded very majestic echoed from the sword. Father, what exactly happened, why did you die, asked Jian Wuxin. Her words actually confirmed that her father had died, but it seemed that he had managed to live again by some method. This wasn't so surprising considering the sword god was an extremely powerful god. People at his level practically had many unfathomable methods. It's not something I can explain, the sword god replied. Anyway, you should leave immediately, my recovery will take a very long time, and this place will be full of chaos. Remember to keep this secret or our clan will be in serious trouble. Jian Wuxin closed her eyes at her father's words. In the end, she sighed, nodding lightly towards the sword before turning to leave. Her steps were a bit slow, but she couldn't help but quicken her pace as there was a strong vibration that appeared. When she arrived in front of the gate, Elder Meng grabbed her wrist then led her away at her speed. It only took them an instant to arrive outside the tunnel again, and the tunnel instantly disappeared. There were no visible effects from outside. They tried to remain calm before looking at Seal and the others. However, they seemed to have no interest in caring about what they were doing. Elder Meng directly took Jian Wuxin away. Little did they know that Seal was smiling as he watched their departure. This was not a disgrace, but a secret that would be even more terrifying if revealed to the public. It was necessary to know that any faction led by a god had so many resources, let alone a supreme god. When the god of the faction dies, it will be difficult for the faction to live peacefully. The hungry wolves will regard it as meat without an owner. Plus, such factions tended to have offended many people, so their enemies were truly countless. Unless they had another god, it was difficult for them to survive. As far as Seal knew, the Jian clan, which was the sword god's clan, did not have any other gods. The Ice Palace at least had the first disciple of the Ice Goddess who was rumored to have become a god, although her current whereabouts were unknown. What made you smile? Mu Yueli suddenly asked Seal. The latter looked at her and laughed softly. How about I say that I smile because I think of you, he said. You. Mu Yueli blushed at that, not knowing whether she was annoyed or embarrassed. Boy, if I were you with the status you got, I wouldn't think about worldly things anymore and focus on cultivating. You're wasting the opportunity you have. She said, giving advice to Seal. However, Seal replied, you're wrong, I didn't waste the opportunity one got. Like now, I'm asking for your help to obtain the Holy Spirit flame. Tomorrow, I will ask the goddess for help to repair my cultivation foundation. Then, I will cultivate with the nature spiritual pill that the elf queen gave me. After that, I will ask the goddess and the queen for help to merge with the Holy Spirit flame. Where am I wasting an opportunity? Of course, having a little fun isn't a bad thing, it's also making use of the opportunity one have, after all, cultivating doesn't have to be all the time. Hearing that, Mu Yueli's mouth froze, suddenly realizing that Seal really had a structured plan. Plus, those 4 opportunities were practically huge opportunities, able to turn someone who was originally mediocre into a seeming genius.